So these 10 matters. How do we, is the world like full of lies today? I mean, the latest, the news, all we've heard on the news for the last year is about fake news. It's like the news is not even news. It's like, see, the problem with the information age, we were all excited if you're my age, like the information age is coming. We didn't realize it was going to be bad information. It's like false information, mixed up information. The devil just had a field day with that. Okay? So how do you find truth in a world full of lies? Who is God, for example? And really, the 10 matters deals with that issue. Yahweh spoke all these words. I'm the one that brought you out of the land of Egypt. Okay? So this is a command. When you understand what this first command is, the reason we don't understand it as a command is just in English, the sentence structure. But when we realize what he's saying, believe in me. This is the command to believe in Yahweh because of who he is and what he is. And not that just I am a God, I'm your God. I'm right here, right now. Okay, I know he. But before, if I started talking about that and there were skeptics here, you start trying to explain this maybe to some of your friends and you're going to go, yeah, well, how do I know that? How do I know that your Yahweh is God? How do I know that? How do I know who is God? There might be lots of gods. I've heard this. You probably have too, especially with some of my young friends in the back rows back there. You start talking about this around college camp. Yeah, there's lots of gods. Who's God? One guy believes in lots of gods. One guy believes in one God. One guy believes in another God. You got another guy believes he is God. And so how do we know who's right? Can we know who's right? Can we know what the truth is? Yes. Well, we would hope so, but around college campuses, you get comments like, there is no absolute truth. To which you reply, are you absolutely sure? Okay? Yeah, think about that one. Well, so can we know? And well, first of all, I'm so glad. Thank you so much for sending in that question. But I am glad that question came up because it's a really important question. And before we answer it, I want you to know that question can be answered. Not just theoretically, not just theologically, not just to make us feel good. We can answer that question with absolute clarity and with absolute truth. But here's the problem. When we answer the question, you're going to have to deal with the answer. You have to be willing to deal with the answer. If you're going to challenge this question, you have to be ready to deal with the answer when you find the truth. Okay? It's fine to challenge this question. I've told you these guys this before. Truth can handle it. There can't be simultaneously two truths. You go, well, that's your truth. It's not my truth. Two truths cannot exist simultaneously at the same time and both be true. Two opposites disagreeing, I left that part out. Two disagreeing truths can't exist simultaneously and both be true. That is not possible. And that's why we can find out the truth here. Because just because somebody says they have the truth and somebody else says they have the truth and 10,000 other people each say they have the truth, doesn't mean any of it's truth, quite honestly. And by the way, what you and I believe has absolutely no bearing on what is truth. We have to deal with that. We probably believe things. I've spent most of my life believing things that are not true. And you find they're not true and you go, again? Like, yep, again. Well, praise Yah that you... That's another step. Let's take the step, A little bit of light, take the step, okay? But by the way, if you don't take the step, you won't see the next step. That's just, he shows you a step. You have to take the step, okay? So this can be answered, and if we're willing to deal with the answer, let's look at this. So the issue here when we have various belief systems, the issue is not whether the belief system that you put forward is monotheistic, atheistic, pantheistic, or otherwise. Okay? The issue is not whether those is exclusive. In other words, the issue is not about whether one person can believe in one God or no God or lots of gods and how can one be right and the other's wrong. That is not the issue. The issue is whether the answers to the 4 basic questions of life pertaining to origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Is this not what religion's about? Where do we come from? What's the meaning of life? What is morality? And what's our destiny? Those are the questions of life. So the issue is whether the answers to these 4 basic questions within the context of these various worldviews that people have, whether they're monotheistic, atheistic, pantheistic, believe in lots of gods, or otherwise, or which God you believe in. The question is, do they meet this test of truth? Okay? And so this is the absolutely imperative questions of life, and these 4 questions are what every human really wants to know. That's what they want to know. Oops, sorry. And so here's it. So when we look at those questions, the question is, are they logically consistent? They can't disagree with each other. You can't, within your belief system, you can't have a truth here that disagrees with a truth here. They have to be logically consistent, okay? Has to just make sense, basically. They have to be empirically adequate. I mean, when we test them, there has to be enough tests to show, yes, that's reasonable, that's adequate, that solves a reasonable question. That would hold up in a I don't particularly want to say a court of law, because we're not necessarily talking about beyond a reasonable doubt. We're talking about a preponderance of the evidence, which is another test in the court. There's 2 tests. Beyond a reasonable doubt, it's not really the test. Test is the preponderance of the evidence, which is you have a scale, does it tilt the scale? It's not like there's nothing else possible. Does it tilt the scale and continue to tilt the scale the same way, the same way, the same way, the same way? Okay? Then it's logically consistent and empirically adequate. And are they experientially relevant? And that means, okay, we can do all this theoretically, but is this what you experience? Do we see this in the world? When we apply all this stuff, do we see it in the world? Experientially, that means what you experience, does it work with that? It has to fit all these things. And the reality is, the answers to life's 4 questions must in each instance correspond to reality, and the sum of the answers must fit as a system. That's Ravi Zachariah. He uses lots of big words, but the guy's brilliant. And when you think about it, you can challenge, and I've seen him challenge, any religious system that you want to put forth, and they all fall apart one at a time. There will be inconsistencies. They won't be adequate. They won't be relevant. They won't be logical. I mean, there's most of them fail right there in the logical consistency. When you look along, you're like, we've got this and this and this and this. Yeah, but you got this. Well, yeah. No, those 2 don't go. Those 2 can't both be true. You have a truth here and the truth here, and those truths disagree with each other. They can't both be true and then be in the same place at the same time. And you're trying to make your religious system fit here. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. God spoke all these words. And what does he say? I'm Yahweh your Elohim who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Know who I am. And by the way, you will have no other mighty ones before me. Okay? So our personal Elohim is speaking. We see that from the language. He tells us not to have any more gods before us. Before him, not before us. I struggled with that when I was a kid. I heard that. You learn the 10 Commandments and, when you're a little kid. You shall have no other gods before me. And I'm like about that big. And I've seen these pictures of all these pagan gods, right? And so I'm picturing, it's like, so if you have like a display of gods, you can't have any of them in front of him. They have to. That's not what it means. Doesn't mean when you're lining up your gods, he's at the front of the line. That's not what it means. Okay, I learned that like, oops. Okay, so I'm like in elementary school, so you've got to forgive me. But see, I was spending a lot of time as a kid. We're in lines all the time. You're like waiting to go to the lunchroom, waiting to go to the bathroom, waiting to get out. Why do they line you up and just make you stand there forever, you know? So I'm thinking in line, you know, that's my brain. But we're going to look here at I think I'm going to just do an expounded, I'm going to look at a couple of things and I'm going to look at an expounded version of that. This is a Dagon pagoda in Myanmar. And if you look closely, all these little houses here, I was just thinking about all the gods and I found a picture of one. Every one of these little pagodas has a different god in it. Hindus. So they got thousands of gods. Myanmar, if you don't know where that is on the map, it's between Vietnam and India. Okay? Small area there. Vietnam's here, India's here, and Myanmar is there. It used to be called Burma. It was held by the British for over 100 years, from 1824 to about 1948. And a British writer and poet, Rudyard Kipling, went there, and he wrote about it. And he's looking at this thing, and this is what he says. He said, then a golden mystery upheaved itself on the horizon. He's driving up. A beautiful winking wonder that blazed in the sun. I mean, that thing's got to be awesome when you come across the terrain there, and all of a sudden, whoa, what is that? I mean, for a British guy, right? He grew up in London, and all of a sudden he's like, what is that? And so he gets up there, and he's looking at it, and he says, the shape was not a Muslim dome or a Hindu temple spire. It stood under a green knoll. It stood on a green knoll. I was like, how did it stand under a green knoll? That would be interesting. Stood upon a green knoll, and below it were lines of warehouses, sheds, and mill. And I'm looking at it, and I say to myself, what new God I thought are the irrepressible English sitting under now? Like, what have we done? See, the British didn't realize, they wanted just they're all saying that the sun never set on the British Empire during this time. They wanted to capture everybody. The problem is when you bring everybody into your empire, you bring that junk into your empire. And if you look at Europe today, all of Europe, but especially England, they have had open door policy and brought junk into their country until their country has been spiritually destroyed. I mean destroyed. And England and the countries around it are just, it's a matter of time. If Yahweh doesn't intercede, they're going to fall one by one by one, and they're right on the verge, and they know it, and they have no clue what to do about it, okay, because of what they've let in their country. And so the problem there is, who is God? You know, and this is not really opinion. I'm going to challenge you to put Yahweh to the test. That's what we have to do when we encounter these cultures. We have to put it to the test. And you see, Rabbi Zechariah, who I quoted earlier, was actually born in this area. He wasn't born in Burma, he was born in India, right next door. And he grew up in this part of the world. And this is what he knew as gods. This is what he knew as religions. Thousands of gods. Thousands of gods. Okay? And at 17 years old, he woke up in a hospital bed. Barely clinging to life. And the doctors thought he wasn't going to make it. 17 years old. He had attempted suicide. He'd been a depressed young teen. He'd repeatedly, literally been beaten by his dad to serious physical injury, serious bodily injury. And he finally decided, I can't take it anymore. And he had swallowed a bunch of poison. And so somebody cleaning the house found him unconscious, brought him to the hospital, and they're trying to bring him back, but so much poison had done so much damage to his body, they didn't know if he was going to make it. And a man showed up at the room with a Bible, and his mom was there, and his mom tries to push the guy out of the room. It's like, no, you can't come in here, don't come in here. And he said, ma'am, it's like, what that boy needs, what I have, he needs way more than anything this hospital can do for him right now. He is about to die. And so the mother finally relented to let him come in and said, what is it you wanted to show him? And said, I want to read him this verse right here. And she said, I would read it. She spoke and she could read it. So she read John chapter 14, end section of it there. And Ravi says when he got to verse 19, he said it hit him like a cold bucket of water. Verse 19 says, because I live, you will live. And he said it just hit him. And he said in desperation, he's like, I really don't want to die. I just can't live. And he said, I said, Jesus, if you are who you claim to be, this is a direct quote, Jesus, if you are who you claim to be, take me out of here, and I will leave no stone unturned in the search for truth. At 17 years old. Today, Ravi Zachariah is the top Christian apologist in the world. An apologist is not somebody who apologizes for what they believe. They're somebody who doesn't apologize for what they believe. They're somebody who challenges anybody who wants to come up them on belief systems. And I've seen him on college campuses around the world. He loves to go to the big ones, Cambridge and all the big universities in Europe and America and, Berkeley, wherever. He welcomes it. He loves it, because he sees all the young people there who don't know the truth. And he shows them how to find truth. And the truth is he has found truth, and that's what he shares with people. The issue is whether the answers to the 4 basic questions of life pertaining to origin, meaning, morality, and destiny within the context of your worldview, do they meet the test of truth? Okay? From your worldview, do they meet the test of truth? Are they logically consistent? Are they empirically adequate? Are they experientially relevant? Okay? And the answers to the last 4 questions must in each instance correspond to reality. Can't be a fantasy. And then the sum of those answers must cohere as a system. And when you put them all to the test, there's only one system. There's only one belief system that stands the test of time, and that's the Bible as originally written in its language, culture, and context. Amen? Amen? Yes. It's truth. And so I challenge anybody that's seeing this, young people, to test it. There's your test. There's your test.